And we are live. Hello, Anna. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Great. Thank you for being here with us today. It's a real pleasure and honor.
Thank you for having me.
Where are you right now?
I'm in my studio in Brooklyn.
Oh, nice.
Where are
Great.
you?
I'm in Israel, in Tel Aviv.
Ah, okay.
Yes, I just arrived. So for me, it's the night, and for you, it's the morning.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, I can see that. So you're in your studio. We can see from here the beautiful pieces that you have. Like how many meters? I mean, yeah, what is the size of this print
Uh,
that you have behind you?
ah, they are, I don't know in meters. In inches, they're
Yeah.
40 inches by 50 inches. These are, um, these are work prints from an exhibition that I just had in Paris.
Oh no, when was it?
Yeah, it opened in November 11th, I believe, and it came down sometime toward the end of December, I think.
Oh, which gallery was it?
It was at Gallery Christophe Gaillard. Do you know
Oh
that
wow.
gallery? You're
Yes,
based
yes.
in Paris normally, right?
Yeah, yeah. Normally I'm in Paris. Yeah. Oh, it's a
Yeah.
shame.
Yeah.
It's when is the next exhibition? You know?
I don't know actually. I just had one in Paris, and then about a year ago I had one in New York.
Nice.
And then hopefully I'll do one in Los Angeles soon. I have a gallery that I work with in Los Angeles, M&B. So we're
Okay.
trying to figure out when our next show will be. So I think that will be the next one.
Okay. No, great. And
Yeah.
really congratulations for this one in Paris.
Oh, thank you.
So, Anna, the first question, gonna be really simple, but for the people who might not know you, just could you introduce yourself, your background, how you start photography, and simply who you are?
Sure. My name's Hannah Whitaker. I'm a photographer. I started out making photographs. I guess really when I was a teenager. I my first interest was more in drawing and painting, and then I sort of came to photography after that. And then when I was in college, I was an art major. I focused on both painting and photography. And then in the end, I thought my photographs were better than my paintings. And so I ended up concentrating on photography.
Okay.
Um, and here I am. I've been a photographer now for a while. I also shoot a fair amount of assignments for magazines. I work with magazines a lot, in addition to showing my work with galleries and things. So I'm involved with photography in a few different capacities.
Yeah, so I see. And my question is, do you always, because I want to go through your process of creation because it doesn't look like a simple photography. It's
Mm,
actually like a mix between painting and photography. So the question gonna be might be stupid, but is it a mix of um, these two these two way of creation, like photography and painting, or is it only photography but you use the light, you use background to make it look like a paint?
mm.
Okay, that's the
Um, that's not a stupid question. I think that's a very valid question because I know that with my work, it's not necessarily self-evident how it was made. Um, so the photographs, I know you can't really see them completely behind you, but the photographs that are behind me and the ones in the Ursula collection, um, most of my work for the past few years, such as those works, are just traditional, conventional photographs. So they're not even really worked on in Photoshop. I make them by creating sets and using kind of in-camera special effects lighting techniques. I actually borrow a lot from special effects techniques used in cinema, sort of before the invention of digital special effects,
okay.
like things like rear projection or masking. All of those things were used in the film industry in a pre-digital era. I use a lot of those techniques in my work, mostly because I really like to do things in camera
I see.
rather than in post-production.
Mhm.
And so in terms of a relationship with painting, I do tend to have a really kind of crafty, hands-on approach to my work. For example, I use this is hard spatially. I use stripes a lot, and
Okay.
for example, these stripes I achieved by photographing a thing I had fabricated. So I had to kind of design that thing and then have it made, and then I had the actual physical object and I photographed that. So sometimes I have objects fabricated to work with. Sometimes I make them by hand to work with. I've even painted actual backdrops with by painting oil paint on canvas. So I'm a very sort of hands-on photographer, even though my photographs typically are conventional digital photographs. That said, I do sometimes, and my work for many years took this sole form of working with a 4x5 film camera.
Okay.
And so that's another big part of my practice, is working with a 4x5 film camera, though I have been sort of less focused on that in the past few years and more focused on just working with the conventional digital camera.
Yeah, no, so now it makes sense because yes, okay, you use a camera, digital camera, but all the process that you do behind for each of your picture, it's like if you did the Photoshop, but previously, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You create the background, you create the lights, you do all the setting, and I'm sure when we see this kind of photography, I'm sure that the times that you pass before just click on the picture must be really huge.
Yes,
Because
I do. Yes, exactly. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You're
please.
exactly right. I do a lot of sketches and planning and stressing before a shoot to make sure that I can sort of build the set properly when I have the person I work with in my studio, which feels like a rare event. So I have to make sure I'm ready.
Yeah, and of course, when you got the picture, it's actually kind of raw. And I'm sure that you, as you say, you don't really touch it because you already made all this process before. But it's a really interesting way because now most of the photographer captures a picture and then they do edits, and this is how they bring their own personality into the picture. And you do all this process, but before. And so at the end, the picture that you have is kind of raw from the camera, from your eyes, from your vision, from the scratch that you did before. So it's a really interesting, point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a purist. I do sometimes do tweaks in Photoshop. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No,
But one of my interests as a maker of photographs is in the sort of random imperfections of life that photography can bring. And so with my work, I focus a lot on toying with ideals, like a kind of idealized visual language, like the kind that you might find in the tech industry, for example, full of gradients and saturated colors and repetitive geometric patterns, but also a kind of ideal in terms of the female form, a kind of idealized physical form.
Yeah.
And so those ideals, I think, are characterized by a sort of perfection, a kind of smoothness, a perfect line, a perfect curve. And so I love how photography, especially a really high resolution camera like a 4x5 film camera, or also a high resolution digital camera, can capture every tiny detail and imperfection. And so my work sort of aspires to achieve that kind of perfect visual clarity. But because photography does what it does, it captures what it captures, there's always like wrinkles and hairs and dust. And I love all of those photographic details that you could never invent, and that they invade your picture nonetheless. And I think that relationship between those details that are kind of inherently chaotic and unpredictable and uncontrollable with this sort of perfect visual clarity, that's like really a big part of my work.
No, yeah, it makes totally sense. It makes totally sense because it's what makes your picture alive and real.
I totally agree.
We're gonna go through your work now. I'm gonna share my screen with your website, and it's true that it can look like not really human. It can look like something from the IE, like something even robotic. So the fact that there is this little imperfection, I think it's a kind of a line between what you want to transmit and what the people gonna see when they see your work, and the reality is that there is a human behind. So I would like to share, let's share your collection on OpenSea. Like this, we can go and I can ask you some insight about it.
Sure.
Okay, can you see? Yes. So we are really lucky, Jenny Dao. That's a wonderful background over there. This beautiful lady holding, you're going to explain me more, but look like a crystal ball. Accurate, and we are really, really happy and super proud of it. So thank you for letting us take care of this beautiful piece.
Thank you.
Ursula. So I wrote the text, of course, and it's, first of all, it's really clear. I mean, it gives good insights already of what you want to share. But I would like you to explain us more. So why is the name Ursula, even though it's explained in the text? So I saw that you have 40 items. Is it a choice? Did you want to make less, more? Like, can you explain us how did you find this idea and what is the message behind?
Yeah, so Ursula is basically a persona that I invented, and it's the idea behind her is that she's a kind of cultural phenomenon, a product of the popular imagination, and the inspiration for her can be found in all over the place. It can be found in the way technology is sort of manifest in contemporary reality. It can also be found in fictional representations of technology, specifically kind of personified technology, like in science fiction movies or in books and things like that. But really, I'm interested in the kind of coming together of fiction and reality with respect to the way technology sort of takes the form, frequently takes the form of a person, and that person typically is gendered female. And so that was sort of the kernel idea of for this project. And so I started to think about who this person is, and if she took a physical form, what would her form look like, and what kind of world would she inhabit, and what kind of objects would she be surrounded with? So that's really what the heart of this project is. And I cast a dear friend of mine named Karen in the role of Ursula. So Ursula is not the name of the person in the photographs. But I did several shoots with her, and I realized I just love to photograph her. It's the same person in every picture, except for the still lifes, obviously. There's something about her that I think is both alluring and also estranging, which I think is an interesting sort of summary of our relationship to technology too. You know, that we have this relationship, for example, to our phones, where we kind of, you know, it is something that we are constantly seduced by, but it's also sort of like an ever-present threat, or sort of like we're constantly estranged by the world it presents to us. And in terms of the name Ursula, I mean, for me, my first association with that name is the witch from The Little Mermaid, and so she has that name has a kind of villainous undertone for me. But then there's also Ursula Le Guin, who is a well-known feminist sci-fi writer, and then there's also Ursula Anders, who's kind of sort of a sex symbol. And so that sort of triangulation of references I thought was really suited this project. The sort of like the villain, the science fiction, and the sort of sexual allure. So that was the genesis of the project.
Wow. No, what you just said is really interesting, because you compare it to the relations that we might have with our phone. And it's true that actually our phone is, sometimes we can even think it's a person, because they know even before that we need something, they can suggest it. And our phone, without it, even for 1 hour, we miss it. But at the same time, when we spend 1 hour scrolling, we just want to throw it away. So, and you say, so of course, this woman that you're photographing is absolutely, I think, perfect for what you wanted to create, because she's a woman, but at the same time, she doesn't have obvious, how can I say, shape. So we cannot feel any sexualization in your art. even though it's like a feminine silhouette. So I think that she was perfect for that, because now the IE, even if there is for some of them some gender, as you said, the feminine gender is mostly represented for the assistants. But when it's about helping doctor or doing consulting, it's male.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and actually there is now a huge debate to say we are creating robot or IE from the scratch. So we need the time to do something with no gender. But it's a huge challenge, because who is creating these robots? Of course, there is some woman, but mostly it's men. So even though they don't, they're going to put the same projection as they want to have for women or for men.
Of course.
And they even say that they prefer to put feminine voices for IE because it's more fun. And there is less chance to get a revolt from feminine robots. So all of this to say that this collection that you created make a lot of sense, and you are highlighting a society, of course, problem, but something that is not even on the plate right now because we are still at the beginning. But I found it really interesting, all this collection with the choice of this particular model, and the fact that she's not really sexually obvious, if I can say. So it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this idea of creating a woman from scratch, like an ideal woman from scratch that then serves its creator, is that story has been told many, many, many times throughout history, and it continues to be told many, many, many times. So I think that's sort of what I meant before when I was saying that idea is kind of very deep within the popular imagination. And I think the notion of male fantasy driving creative impulses is a really interesting one, because I think it very much relates to the idea that male fantasy can also drive technological innovation. And then, of course, the results of that innovation, as you stated before, has a very particular point of view. And so I do think that that's obviously something that we should all kind of be aware of, and you know, as technology progresses, and that those ideas were very present while I was trying to plan these works and put them together and figure out what kind of elements made sense in them.
So I have a question. Maybe it's weird, but would you say that this specially collection was on a way feminist? We can have, each person can have their own definition of feminism, but in your definition, is this work something feminist or no?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't have a problem with the word feminist by any means.
I mean, I can get offense, you know, but
no, I don't understand taking any offense with describing oneself as a feminist. Yes, I am an unapologetic feminist. Everything I do, I hope to imbue with that spirit of feminism. Yes. But, you know, that said, I do think that, you know, like I said, I'm an unapologetic feminist, but I think at the same time, I live in a flawed world. I live in an imperfect world, and the stories that I consume are informed by that world, and my tastes are informed by that world. And so I do think, you know, the subject in these photographs, who, like I said, is a dear friend of mine, you know, she does adhere to traditional beauty standards. And so I do think that there is a kind of critique of that flawed world within the work. But at the same time, it does in certain ways kind of indulge in the same things that it might be critiquing. So I am trying to kind of walk a sort of fine line with these photographs and critique something that I'm also maybe allowing myself to be seduced by, and maybe trying to seduce somebody else with too. So some of these ideas I have a sort of complicated relationship to.
Yeah. I mean, being feminist is really something complicated, because it's always fighting actually to your inner self, to everything that you learn, to your environment. And it's, as you said, it's a really tight relation, and it's difficult to really know what is good and what is not. I mean, for yourself. So to see the limits, you know, your own definition of feminist, and what is positive for you, or what is the kind of, you know, line to not cross, if I can say.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw this work using a model as a woman, like a model, a feminine model, and the fact that it's a feminist collection, would you say that it's possible so to be feminist and using body parts? Because just to try to clarify my question, there is some women, like such as Femen, who used to show their chest to protest and to be equal to men, to show that they can have access to their own body too. Okay, some people would say that it's not good for the cause, because why would you use a feminine body as an object if you want to, you know, protest against this objectification of the human body? So when we see your work, we see a feminine silhouette, and it's a feminist collection. So what would you say about this? Can we be feminist and use our body, and not your body, but use the objectification of the feminine body?
Yes, that's a great question, and I think what you're getting at is a little bit what I was getting at in my previous comment too. I totally agree. I am objectifying this person, and that can be very problematic. And I mean, objectification of somebody obviously can be very problematic, which is why I think it's very important to have discourse around work, and to, you know, engage in conversation like we're doing now, to have to create a context for the work that we're experiencing, because and I think for me, I think it's okay to do so in this work, because I'm doing so in order to sort of comment on this, you know, flawed and complicated world that we live in. And for me, that's how to make an image that that can access these ideas that I want to access. But I totally agree that these photographs do not depict the full humanity of this person. and that's impossible for a photograph to do. She's a complex being. These photographs in no way attempt to capture the complexity of her as a human being, and I don't consider them at all to be portraits. She's a participant in this project. She is inhabiting a role. So they are not in any way about her. And so for me, considering it's important that people don't refer to them as portraits, for example, because I am objectifying. They are not of her. She's being transformed as a part of this project, and she is participating in a kind of larger critique, a larger cultural critique, as I am.
I think, it was really important that you clarify this, because now that I see this picture with your explanation, it makes totally sense. We just see a shadow. We see a feminine shadow, but she's a shadow. And she's living in this environment with different on each photographs. And it's true that she's not the center. She's part of something who is bigger and who is different, and who can be a bit rough, who can be more sweet. I mean, this is what I feel. But it's just like if she's everywhere, and at the same time, she's everywhere in our life too. Maybe this is more clear with your explanation. It's definitely more clear.
Yeah, I think that's very well put, and you're correct. She's almost always in full silhouette, like to the point where there's no detail, there's no shadow detail in her. She's totally black in most of the photographs, with the exception of tiny details, small parts that I've illuminated, or just a little bit of light illuminating a small the side of her face, or in the ones that you have up, those green circles, and that's very intentional. I mean, I use the silhouette heavily in my work, as you can see in my studio too. It's a tool, it's a lighting technique that I find endlessly fascinating, and I think in this project it really helps access this idea of describing this person as a human figure. She invokes a human form, but we don't see her full humanity. We don't have access to the details. We're denied a lot of visual information. And so I think it's really kind of trying to be about that tension of what you can see and what you're actually denied from seeing.
Yeah. Wow. No, I'm blow mind, because it's true that it's so much better with a great explanation like this. We can see so much more actually. This is why the vision of the photograph of the artist, it's so important to know before. I mean, you can have your own interpretation, as I had when I looked through your works, but now with this explanation, I can even go deeper. And so just for that, thank you, because it's really amazing.
Oh, so, well,
yeah, please.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk with you about it.
No, it's great. And so actually, I jumped directly to the collection, but I didn't ask you the question before. How did you start NFTs? I mean, how did you, were you already into crypto, into blockchain before, or you just jump in the rabbit hole like me or like a lot of people, and now you are focusing? How did this happen?
So I have dabbled in a little bit of crypto, but I really entered into the NFT world through my partner, Matthew Porter, who he is much more involved in the NFT world than I am. And I think it was maybe initially his suggestion that I do an NFT collection. And I think it's a very interesting world. And I still feel very new to it. And I still feel like I am learning a lot about it. But I think it's one thing that I think is really interesting about the NFT space that I didn't know until I really, until I did my own collection, was from the outside, it seems to be simply a marketplace. Like, it seems to be just a place where you buy and sell NFTs, and it is a marketplace. And of course, there's a real world, art world marketplace, which has, similarities and differences. But it's, a kind of like parallel other sort of marketplace. But, and I'm much more, I'm much more familiar with the sort of real world, art world marketplace. And I think, we sort of, that exists alongside of spaces in the art world that provide opportunity for discourse, like criticism and, artist talks and things like that. And the sort of coexistence of those things is what makes it all feel worth it. And so, I think one thing that's interesting about the NFT space is I didn't really realize that things like this took place, or Twitter space. I didn't even know what a Twitter space talk was until recently. But all of those things are happening, and there is actually a lot of discourse, and there is actually a lot going on outside of the buying and selling of things. And I think that that's just a really satisfying aspect of making art in general, is engaging in conversation and meeting like-minded people, and meeting people who want to talk about art. And so I was really kind of pleased to discover that aspect of the NFT world, that it's not just a marketplace. There's all this other stuff going on too.
No, I totally agree. And I did a lot of interview of photographer, and more I do interview, more I'm amazed by the passion, by the goodwill and the support that each of the photographer bring to the other. And I really feel that it gives a lot of opportunity to talk, to create, to engage, and even to contribute to the creation on another project. And it's the beautiful part of NFTs, it's the art. And if we have to talk about the contribution, well, the artists, it's normal that they get paid for the work they do, but it's on a good way, it's like on a transparent way. And it's so far what you just said, everything is true. It's just really positive. And there is a lot of discussion, a lot of talk, a lot of energy coming out of it. And it's really beautiful. And, I just have one question for you. So, because related to your work, so you are a woman, You are a photographer, an artist.
True.
And would you, if you have to give one advice for, I don't know, let's say a young artist who wants to go into this sphere, who can appear really masculine, and which is, we have to say, the case. Things are changing, but it's still the case, even if it's really positive. What advice would you give for a young photographer?
Specifically a young woman, you mean?
Let's say if she wants, if she's a friend.
The advice that I would give is to uplift other women. I think I don't know why this is, but I think there's a real tendency for male artists to band together and to create networks where they uplift one another. They write about each other's work, they give each other opportunities. And I don't know why this is, but for some reason, I just have not observed that happening to the same extent with women. And I think there's something that we internalize about having to do it on our own. And I think there's a real kind of impulse to sort of labor in solitude among women. And so I would really, I think it's important to kind of like acknowledge that and talk about it. And so I would really encourage young photographers starting out to band together and to kind of uplift each other and to write about each other and give opportunities to each other and to kind of like fight that impulse to be totally by yourself and to go it alone.
No, it's a beautiful advice. I asked this question the few times that I had the chance to interview a female artist, because for me it's really important because what you just described, I feel it, and I'm sure that sometimes you feel it too. And it's really beautiful to see that the response of that is, as you say, to be collaborative, to lift each other, because it's true that women are always more in competition on the sociological part, on the anthropomorphical part, like since the beginning of the human being species, right? It's the women have to be competitive to each other. But as you said, maybe the solution is to be together and helping each other. It's a new space, it's a new world. Maybe it's time to write new kind of code. So
totally agree.
And can we just have maybe some insight of another collection or the upcoming projects?
Well, I received a commission from Obscura.
Amazing, Obscura. Yeah, we love it.
Yeah. And so they actually are commissioning me to make some new photographic work, which I'll be doing in the month of March. So it's going to be 55 images, so it's actually quite a lot. So I'll be spending February kind of doing sort of pre-production and planning and figuring out what that body of work is going to be, and then I'll be spending the month of March making those 55 images. So unfortunately I can't share more details than that right now, but hopefully I'll be able to soon.
Oh no, but you know, when I was talking about this community, for me, I didn't say it out loud, but for me it was Obscura. You know, build people together, everybody can contribute. If they like the project, they like the idea, and this is exactly what I was explaining. It's so nice that there is this kind of, you know, of platforms that now exist and allow to people from every part of the world to contribute, to help each other. So I'm really glad and happy to hear that you're gonna work with Obscura. It's wonderful. It's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so we just have to wait a few months to see what's going to be the next.
Yeah, I think it will be released. The images will be released the first week of April is the schedule, hopefully, if all goes well.
Okay, let's see. Okay, Anna, well, thank you so much for this really interesting conversation.
Thank you so much.
I'm gonna share it to our community, to the uJenny DAO community, and like this, they will see your work differently, I'm sure. And I cannot wait to see your upcoming project too. Really.
Thank you very much. This was really fun.
Yes, thank you, Anna. Take care.
Okay, take care. Bye.